Hello, my friends. This is Eric Parker with One Number Tableau Experts. In this week's Tableau video, I want to cover how can you build a sales funnel dashboard in Tableau. Okay, so we're going to start with kind of a little bit bigger picture. This is something I feel like I've been doing more or less for probably close to a decade. Any organization, for the most part, has some form of sales funnel, even if you don't think of yourself as an organization that does sales. Everybody kind of does like a little bit, right? And I've been asked to build all sorts of crazy funnels over the years. And so I'm pulling some inspiration right now from a client that I've been working with recently. They do like digital marketing in home services. So if you're like doing bathroom remodels or HVAC or things like that, if you need somebody to help you with that, I got your guy. But anyways, we're going to be diving into this example. I have a link to the example data in the description. It took me a while to build this, so I hope that you will find it helpful. It's going to be something that's simplified, but resembling what real-world sales data may look like. So we will come back to this. That is supporting the visual that you see in front of you. And this might be a little bit different than what you think of when you usually think of a sales funnel. So let's start by talking about that, right? So first of all, like a classic funnel, like a literal funnel, if you're going to funnel something into a jar or a glass, it looks like this, right? And I do see people making visuals like this still fairly often, but my big issue with this is that you run into sort of visual disproportionality, basically, right? So you have the top of the funnel, which is 100%, and depending on your funnel, you may whittle it down to 20, 10, 5, 1%, 0.1%. Like it gets so tiny that the actual visual is not that useful. So that's why I steer away from those a little bit. I don't always find that visual to be that compelling or helpful. Now, there are other more complex types of funnels that you can create, right? You can go build a crazy Sankey funnel that would show you, hey, of all the money that came in, here's the 100 different places that it branched off into, right? You probably have seen visuals like that as well. They're interesting, but they can be a little bit overwhelming. And kind of the more that I've tinkered and worked with clients, the more that I have found something like this to be helpful, that basically you get to kind of see, hey, like, okay, when we're, like in this example, what weeks did we bring in the highest number of inquiries? What did those conversion rates look like? Did we get to a consultation? Did we end up giving them a proposal? What percentage actually converted into somebody that wanted to work with us, right? And if we wanted to, we could stitch in some revenue figures here as well. You can actually see that in the tooltip here. So that is a bit of a lay of the land for what we'll be building. So this will be a little bit of a longer form video. We'll be writing out some calculations and building. So feel free to buckle up, download that example data, and we'll get going. And just a quick side note, like, hopefully you get to learn a lot from us in these videos, but we usually just get 10, 15, 20 minutes with you. If you ever want to learn more, you can check out this info button up here in the top corner. We have 5 different classes that we run on Tableau Desktop, Calculations, Tableau Prep. You can book me for an office hour. You can book me to build all your Tableau stuff and just never have to deal with it again. So feel free to check that out. We'd love to connect with you and maybe even work with you more, okay? So that said, let's go ahead and dive into how we build something like this. Now, let me do a new worksheet, and I've got a fresh copy of the data source here that has like no calculations or anything in there yet. Now, every data source is going to be a little bit different, right? Depending on what CRM you use and like what data is captured and what columns you have. Your calculations in real life may look a little different than mine, but I think the overarching principles would be the same. So if I'm sort of looking at that and thinking about, okay, like what are some of the core measures that we need to create? Let's just start with inquiries, okay? So I could probably use either an inquiry ID or an inquiry date to help me out on that front. So let's just dive right into it. We're going to create a calculated field. I'll call this inquiries. And I think, honestly, I think we could just do a count of, we don't really have like cancellations or anything, right? So I'll just say like, give me a count of inquiry date, okay? Let's just double check our calculations working. There's no problem. So there's 3,000 rows of data. I do remember that that's how many rows I baked into this example data set. So, okay, cool. So far, so good. Next up, I want to count our consultations. It's going to be basically run that same playbook again, right? So create calculated field, consultations, and this time give me a count of the consultation date. All right. And let me double click on that and see what that comes in at. So that seems low. Did I do count distinct on accident? I did. Bad me. Slap my own wrist. Count. Give me a count of consultation date. Count distinct will count how many unique values there are. Obviously, you can have more than one consultation on the same day. they take you less than 8 hours and you have more than one person doing it. So, okay, that makes more sense. We have 3,000 inquiries and about 2,300 consultations. Next up would be proposal. And I guess maybe let me back up for a second. So when I did count of consultation date and it actually came back at less than 3,000, why did that happen? So the way this data is structured is like you will notice that the consultation date is null if one was never set, right? So say Wendy shoots me an email and says, hey, I'm interested to do a bathroom remodel. Can we talk about it? And we go, yeah, for sure. Like, we'd love to talk to you. When can we do that? And Wendy just drops off the face of the earth, never calls us back. It's like, okay, no consultation date for Wendy, right? So that's what's going on there. And that kind of holds true for everything, right? So next step would be proposals. So same idea. Proposals, give me a count of the proposal date. Throw that in measure values. I do count distinct again? I know I did. This is a bad habit. I need to try and break this. Okay, there's that. And finally, the actual sales count. To try and keep myself from doing that again, I'm actually going to duplicate. The field and then just swap out the reference. So this will be my sales date. Just to clarify, I'm going to call this sales count because I could see that easily getting confused for like a sales dollar amount. And that's 662. Okay. I mean, I think all those numbers check out at a high level. I don't see anything there after my corrections that really alarm me. So I think we're in good shape. So now we want to create some conversion calculations, right? So to go back to the initial sheet, and it's kind of hard to see there. Let me go to it here. We've got inquiry to consultation percentage, consultation to proposal percentage, proposal to sale percentage, and then this one kind of jumps all the way down. This is a consultation to sale percentage, right? So of course we could actually just like throw numbers on here as well. And if that's what you want to do, that's great. I think I have all those behind the scenes in the tooltip. So if anybody wanted to hover over and see like, how did we get to the number 36%? Oh, that was 26 of 72. Then they can see that. Up to you. I think a lot of times that like I don't know, it depends on small sample sizes and issues like that. But I think sometimes the percentages can be a little bit more telling from a story perspective than just kind of pure numbers. So it's really up to you though. Customize this and do this the way that you want, right? I'll just call this our sales funnel example. So know what we're doing over here. All right. So let's go ahead and start creating. Well, actually, before we create those conversion calculations, let me change the number format. I saw some of them were throwing decimals on there. So I've just control selected those 4 calculations. I'm going to go to default properties, number format. I'm going to go to number custom and no decimal places. Let's do it. Didn't really change anything in our visual, but it'll keep random decimals from popping up. All right. So next up will be our conversion calculations, right? So I would say, okay, first up will be inquiry to consultation. Oh my gosh, no spell check. So risking my life here. I guess this would actually be consultations divided by inquiries, right? So if I do that and say, okay, this time let's format this as a percentage right off the bat. So if it's 2,300 divided by 3,000, that would be like almost 80%, I think. Yeah, there you go, 79%. All right, my mental math is on today, at least in that example. There's no guarantees it will continue, but let's go ahead and duplicate this. So next up will be our consultation to proposal percentage. All right, let's back this out. So this will be proposals divided by consultations. Everything's already aggregated because we wrote count into the underlying calculations. So that simplifies things for us here. Consultation to proposal. Let's see what that looks like. 70%. All right. Sure. Sounds good. Next up will be proposal to sale percentage. Okay. And if you're looking at this and thinking like, this is not really how I do Tableau, like it's not usually, we're just like mass doing calculations. I think that is totally fair. I feel like this is a little bit of a unique circumstance because we already had an idea of what we were going to be creating. Now we just get to sit here and write like 10 calculations. But in the real world, I feel like it's much more like iterative and one piece at a time, and like, oh, let me go add this and see if that looks good. But in this case, we're kind of going off a template, right? So that changes things a little bit. Okay, so last step would be consultation to sale percentage, right? And the reason that we did consultation to sale percentage is because, yes, there are all those other intermediary stages. Oops, I need to rename that to get rid of copy at the end. Yeah, there's all those intermediary stages about proposals and consultations and all that stuff. But, like assuming you're a salesperson, if somebody sends you an inquiry and you respond and they don't get back to you, there's not like really anything you could do about that, right? Unless you said something that was super offensive in your response and you're like, hey, what's up, you, whatever, insert your favorite cuss word. Like, yeah, don't do that, right? But for the most part, you just say, yeah, sure, let's get something on the calendar. When can we talk? If they don't get back to you, you can't control that. But assuming that, you do get to talk to somebody, then like it's at least a little bit on you from there, right? Like maybe there's random people that are impossible to sell to, but they're, in aggregate, if you have 100 or 1,000 people, you can move the needle a little bit, right? Maybe you give them a bad quote or you say something stupid or I don't know, whatever, right? So it's something that maybe you have a little more control over. So you might not have control over how many inquiries you get, but maybe you have some control from the consultation stage going forward. That's the idea there. So all these things make sense because our funnel goes like this. The number gets lower and lower as you start at inquiries and work your way down to the sales count. And kind of same thing here. You started inquiries and work your way down to the sale count, sale percentage, and the percentages drop, which makes sense, right? It's going to be harder to, get to a proposal than just to like get to a meeting, probably. All right. So I think we have all of our kind of big picture calculations. So let me go ahead and actually clear the sheet out for a second. We're going to start a little bit fresh here. And then what I'm going to do is we're going to use inquiry date. And here's my thought on this is that everybody will have an inquiry date, right? Not everybody will have a sale date. So that makes things a little more challenging. So what I'll do is I'm going to update my title here and I'll say something like, sales funnel, conversions by inquiry week start date. So what does that mean? Well, what we're going to end up doing here is going to look like this. I'm going to get my inquiry date, throw that on columns, hit the drop down, choose, I don't want a week number. I just want the day. Wait, actually, let me see. Did I do a custom date part for this? No, I didn't. Okay. Try this again. I'm going to get my inquiry date. I'm going to right click and drag it to columns and just choose week. That's what I was looking for. I wanted that week directly out of the menu. So let's go ahead and select that and say, okay. So in this example, I've got data ranging from the week starting June 30th all the way to the week starting December 29th. This is 2024 in this example. So let's do a few things here. First of all, let me right click on that field on the column shelf and convert it to discrete because we don't want an axis. So we want discrete columns. And then I don't need to see this many weeks all at once. About like maybe monthly would be interesting in an alternative scenario, but because I limited this to a shorter span, let me throw a copy of inquiry date on filters, do a relative date. Let's go ahead and just start with last 8 weeks. And then I'm going to anchor this on, I think the original example had it anchored, the week ending December 28th, because that's the last full week in the data set. So this is something specific to this data set to make this look good. In the real world, there's a very high likelihood you don't want to anchor it on a set date. You want it to anchor on today's date and be dynamic. Or maybe you want to write some custom calculation to let your user adjust what that end date would be. If you want to do that type of thing, check out, we've got all sorts of date filtering and customization videos. So I'll put a couple of those in the description below if you want to dig into those in a little more detail. But if I do this, you can see that the little preview in Tableau says that this will range from November 3rd to December 28th. So, okay, cool. Sign me up. So we'll say okay. Okay, so let's set our mark type to circle. Okay. And then here's where things get interesting. So part of what makes this approach to building a sales funnel unique, to set my fit to fit with, by the way, is I'm going to do this. We're going to have multiple different measures, right? Inquiries, this percentage, that percentage. So let me put measure names on rows and then measure values on label. And it's going to go a bit crazy at first because Tableau throws everything at us, right? So you can see here, it's throwing, I don't know, we must have like 10 different measures on here. And I don't actually want to see all those. So what I'm going to do is get another copy of measure names, put that on filters, edit that copy of measure names that's on filters. And then this is where we're going to choose, what do we actually want to keep? So inquiries, and then basically all of our percentage fields. Those are the ones I actually want to show. So I think that's it. And then now we need to sort these into the order that we'd like to see them, right? So inquiries would be the first thing that you hit, and then inquiry consultation percentage. I can't really see these. Let me expand. Let me collapse that window a little and expand this one. Consultation to proposal. Okay, proposal to sale, and then finally consultation to sale percentage. Okay, I think that makes sense. So let me do this now. I'm going to align. I'm going to do some center alignment to get the text in the middle. Let's bump the size of those circles up quite a bit. So we have no visual formatting going for us at this point, like no colors showing us where the higher or lower values are, but we have sort of the basic premise of what it is that we set out to create, which is we have a funnel visual. So first of all, a little slow clap, pat on the back for us here. Like, all right, we got to this point. So now let's go ahead and dig into some formatting. Right. So I'm going to get another copy of measure values. I'm going to control drag measure values from label, the one that's on label here, control, important. Or if you're on a Mac, I think it's maybe command. So you're going to control drag that to color so that we get color on our marks. Now, the problem in this scenario is that Tableau just set a singular color range for the entire worksheet. And so you've got like 122 inquiries being compared to a conversion percentage of 0.25 or 25%. So the scale is really messed up. So what I actually want to do is have a unique scale per measure, right? So in that case, what I'll do is the measure values that's on color, I'm going to hit the drop down there and say use separate legends. So this is our little cheat code here. We're going to hit that. And then there you go. Now I have a unique color legend for every single row or every single measure. And now it's up to us to decide, what do we actually want that to end up looking like, right? So like inquiries, I wouldn't say that's totally out of, for a salesperson, maybe that's a little out of their control because that's probably a little bit more in the hands of marketing, right? So I might just try and use something like gray there just to be like, hey, like here's where it's higher or lower, but we're not like penalized. It's not like red. We're not like penalizing you if it's lower. If you like the default blues, like sweet, by all means, just roll with those. But if you want to customize this, if you want to mix it up, this is a great way to potentially work in some of your maybe company branding, right? So for example, I might just pick some random diverging color palette, pick white for the low end of the palette, and then for the upper end of the palette, I don't know what I used originally. I guess I'll just go with this sort of turquoise color here. Say okay. Now, if you want to get really fancy, you can go and like formalize this as a color palette that you can pick and just pick this every time. Now, we're not doing that today. You can do that. I'll put a link below to talk about where you do that. But this is going to be a little bit more of a manual effort. So we'll just kind of speed run this thing. I'm just going to have to do that same thing about 5 times here. So bear with me as I do that. Okay. And I guess quick side note, if you're like, well, how do I know what my company color is? Like I have one that I would like to use, but it's on our website, but I don't have like the hex code or whatever. So if you like split screen Tableau and like a web browser in that scenario, you can always select pick screen color and just, if I did it right now, it would pick the green in the measure values pill for me. So you can always just do that to grab a color on the fly and then just, copy and paste that code there to reuse that thing over and over again. Okay, we're almost there. Now you'll notice that the white circles are getting super faded out because they're just fading right into the white background. So let me go ahead and go to the color drop down on my marks card and we'll select border. And I'm just going to pick this like medium gray so that we don't totally lose those. And honestly, like things are looking very good. So from a visual perspective, I'm getting pretty happy with where things are at. I do see a few additional formatting tweaks that I think would be nice to make though. One of those is that these date names are pretty long. So let me right click on the inquiry date here and select format. It just defaulted to like the full month name. So let me do well, depends if you're American or not, if you will like this selection, but we could do this where we just pick like month/day/year. For those of you overseas, you may want to mix that up or customize that or do year, month, days, or maybe you're even Canadian, you want to mix it up. I don't know, you do you there, but this works all right for me and for a lot of the audiences I would work with. They would know what's going on here, so that's good. I'm going to hide that field label just to preserve space because I already called out what that date field is in my title. And then the last major piece of formatting that I see is I want to get these tooltips to be more descriptive, right? So that when I hover over this and it says inquiry to consultation percentage, I don't just see 83%. I don't have to do the mental math on that. Like I could just see what that number is. So I'm going to go ahead and select every field. Actually, you know what? We don't have an actual sale field yet. I have a proposal amount, but I haven't actually created a calculation for it yet. Let me see how we did that. So I said, if is null sales date equals false, then proposal amount. Okay, that makes sense to me. So let's do that. Oops. Oh my golly. Okay, here we go. So basically, as long as there is a sales date, then we're going to assume the sale happened. And then we're just going to say, yeah, they assumed, they took the proposal amount. So maybe your data is more complicated and there's counter arguments and, hey, what did we end up deciding on? But whatever. That's not the way this data is set up. So I'm in charge. All right. So if is null sales date equals false, AKA it's kind of a double negative, which is annoying, but there is a sales date, then give me the proposal amount. Okay. And let me just set that to have a dollar number format, currency, no decimals. Okay. So we have sale amount, we have proposals, we have inquiries, we have consultations, and sale count. Okay. So I'm going to drag all of those to tooltip, which is going to get quite out of hand there for the moment. And actually what I'm also going to do, don't hate me, I'm also going to shift and then control drag all of the fields that are in measure values. I'm going to put all those on tooltip as well. So temporarily our tooltip is going to be quite a lot of information, but now it's up to us to be able to modify this. So it looks nice. I feel like this could be pretty boring just watching me do that for 5 minutes. So what I might actually do is just steal the tooltip from my example and just copy and paste it. But just so that I don't totally leave you in the dark about like, how is this set up? So if you look closely, basically what you have is you say, like for this example, inquiry to consultation percentage. So the first thing that I do is reference the inquiry to consultation percentage field. And then I say, X consultations of X inquiries, right? And then for consultation to proposal, I say, here's the percentage. Now it's proposals of consultations. So notice consultations is being used both here and here. And actually, I think I end up using it again down here, right? So I have referenced the same fields multiple times. If you ever like accidentally remove a field and you're like, I need to bring it back, just hit the insert button and you can reference any field that's like on your worksheet can be referenced like that. But again, for the sake of not putting you to absolute sleep here, let me just copy and paste this and then let's see how well that went off. Pretty good. Okay, I messed the field name up. It was sales amount in the other data source and it's sale amount here. Let me just rename that. And I think that actually, that alone, that rename may fix our issue. Let's see. Bingo. All right, cool. So now as we hover over, I will see, hey, what does 83% actually mean? That means 105 of 127. Now, one extra idea just came to me, and if you've made it this far, then I assume you are just along for the ride. So let's just do it, which is that maybe there's a scenario where like, yeah, it's nice to see, the hard count of the inquiries, but then like, hey, I also want to see the number. I don't want to have to hover over to see the consultation count or the sale count or whatever that might be, right? And I would understand that. So you could build another funnel that just has the hard numbers versus the percentages, or we could also just build like a supporting worksheet, right? So I'll just call this like my numbers table. It's kind of boring. How do I want to do this? In some ways, it'd be nice to just duplicate this sheet. Okay, yeah, let's do that. I'll just call this numbers. I know, super descriptive. Okay, so I'm actually going to strip out all the measures from the sheet. So those can all go away. This can go away. Actually, I just want the inquiry date to stay here. And then actually, I know, all over the place. Bear with me. I know this just came to me on the fly here. But what I want to do then is I'm going to put measure names on rows. Let me change my mark type to text. Let me put measure values on text. And then in this scenario, we put measure names on filters. And this time we're just keeping the counts, right? So we already have inquiries, so that feels a little redundant. But I would like to keep consultations, proposals, sale amount, sales counts. Anybody else? Anything I'm missing? I don't think so. So let's just see how this goes. And then consultations, proposals. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Okay, cool. So now let's see what this would look like in a dashboard. So let me go ahead and do this. Let me just customize my sizing. 1100 by 700 usually works pretty well for my screen for the sake of examples. And then let's get our funnel on here. Let's get our sort of supporting number sheet down below. Now, I want this to take up as little space as possible because I know we're already going to be cutting it a little bit close on space for our funnel itself. So I could just throw that there. Let's get rid of this here. Let's call this our funnel dashboard. Let's go ahead and show a title. Honestly, I actually don't know if we need a title. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, we will. And actually, I'm just debating how I want to do this. I don't know. I'm going to leave funnel dashboard on there because I don't have a better name off the top of my head at this moment. But if I do think of something, by all means, we'll make an adjustment. So let me do this. Let me get rid of the outer padding. And then let's actually get a few filters in here, right? So just to kind of show off how that could look. So I'm going to put a horizontal container below the title, but above the worksheet. Now let's pop back into our funnel sheet. And what are some things we would want to filter on? There's not a ton to go off of in this sheet, but or in this data set, but there are a few things we could do. So this covers a several state area. So I'll throw state on my filters card. There was like a project type. Yeah, because there's like bathrooms or kitchens. So, okay, I'm going to put that on filters as well. And then inquiry date, we'll use that. So let me pop back over to my dashboard now, and we're going to show all of our filters. So I think we would lead with inquiry date, followed by, let's say, state, followed by project type. Let's do a little reconfiguration here. Now, one of the beauties of a horizontal layout container like this is that I can make all these filters the same width very easily. So project type, if I double click on this, it selects the container. I hit the drop down on the container. I say distribute contents evenly. So there's that. Okay, so let's make these both multiple value drop downs that have apply buttons. Bane of my existence. Okay, a little side note. I did on the ideas forum today just see that Tableau put the idea of formatting multiple filters at once. It was moved into like priority or something like that a few months ago. So I don't know, maybe they'll be working on that eventually. So let's make sure that each of these worksheets now, or each of these filters now applies to both worksheets. So if I select inquiry date, let's make sure it applies to the numbers sheet down below. Same goes for project type. And then same goes for state. And then we'll just run a couple of quick tests. All right, so for example, if we're like, hey, how is our bathroom division doing? So I select that. I can kind of see, hey, we sold a lot of those in early December. Maybe these husbands are out here like, yo, honey, I got you a bathroom remodel for Christmas. I don't know, but all right, that's good. We can kind of see what some of these numbers are. And then I think one of the reasons, I need to clean up the tooltip down here, but one of the reasons I think that it could be nice to just have a little supporting sheet like that with the numbers is because I imagine a lot of you run into this scenario too, like your users, they want to be able to print this off. They want to be able to save it as a PDF. They want to be able to screenshot it and send it to somebody. Maybe they have access to Tableau. Maybe they don't, right? So, having to hover over to see some of those numbers may be in some ways a little bit too restrictive, in which case, this would be a solution that would help with that. So Boom. All right. You made it this far, which is incredible. So thank you for being here. Just one last little plug here that if you're ever interested to learn a bunch more stuff with us, I mentioned the classes at the beginning. We actually have this passport program too, which is half off all of our classes for a 6-month period. It's 64 hours of live instruction. You get some personalized time with my colleague Ollie or I. It's amazing. So we would love to see you there if that is up your alley. And let us know in the comments if this worked for you, if this was helpful, if you made some modifications, you found something else that you found useful. Also, let us know if it didn't. We would love to be able to help if you're feeling stuck on something. So thank you, and we will see you here next week with another Tableau video. Until then.